enquanto plataforma, principalmente com o objetivo de mostrar isso do ponto de vista dos usuários. O nosso objetivo hoje é falar da plataforma do Twitter, primordialmente com foco em negócios. Tá? Nós estamos oficialmente lançando a nossa operação comercial aqui no Brasil. Isso significa dizer que nós estamos ativamente no mercado, trabalhando junto com as agências e os anunciantes, para que eles possam utilizar a nossa plataforma e alavancar as oportunidades de comunicação que a nossa plataforma permite. Então, o nosso objetivo aqui hoje é falar sobre a nossa plataforma sob o ponto de vista de negócios. Nós vamos ter a presença aqui de 3 executivos dos Estados Unidos, que eu já vou apresentar, e que vão estar endereçando essa apresentação para vocês. E ao final dela, nós vamos ter uma sessão para a gente responder perguntas que eventualmente aconteçam. E eu espero que vocês possam, enfim, ter todas as informações que vocês gostariam aqui durante o dia. Primeiramente, aqui do meu lado esquerdo, eu tenho o Joe Langenfeld. O Joe ele é VP de Brand Strategy do Twitter. Ele está alocado em São Francisco e ele vai ser a primeira pessoa a estar falando brevemente com vocês. Ao lado do Joe, nós temos o Guy Galif. O Guy ele é Head of Global Product Marketing do Twitter. E ele vai também falar um pouco da apresentação dele. E finalmente, na outra ponta, o John Plumetsakos. O John ele é Director of Sales Middle Market. Então ele vai falar especificamente das oportunidades que a plataforma do Twitter oferece para médias empresas e como a gente vai ativar isso aqui no Brasil. Então o nosso foco ele vai ser, de um lado, falar sobre como é que nós vamos atender grandes anunciantes e grandes agências e também como é que nós estamos nos estruturando para também interessar oportunidades para médias empresas, que é um espaço imenso, e o John vai poder falar isso mais detalhes para vocês. Dito isso, eu queria passar diretamente para o Joe, agradecer a presença de todos mais uma vez, e por favor, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to talk about Twitter. I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about Twitter as a platform and really our growth, really what we believe in and what we stand for. And then talk a little bit about Twitter as an advertising business and go through some of the great examples that we're seeing. And then Guy is going to take it over and talk a little bit more about the products that are available today. So we've really had an amazing year in 2012. Giant world events like the Olympics have really taken Twitter to a new stage. And the way that we've been talking about the product is it's the global town square. It's where conversations happen. It's where people talk about world events. An example like this is during the Euro Cup 2012. And this is a single moment in time when France scored on England. What you're seeing are tweets around the world. You can see the tweets in red are from France and about France. And then the silent majority is the tweets in blue. And those are the ones that were angry that they just got scored on. But the powerful thing is, this was one moment in time where it was 7 in the afternoon in London, and it was 6 hours earlier in New York. And around the world, people were there talking about it. So for giant events like this, it's where people congregate. For tragic events, like the nightclub fire in Santa Maria, 3.7 million tweets were sent during the tragedy from celebrities, from friends, from family, just to show the support and reach out and share in the conversation. So Twitter as a platform, we feel a really big responsibility to build an advertising business that we're proud of, and one that takes into account the fact that it's a different platform. It's fundamentally different than anything that's come along before. For those that have been watching advertising our whole lives, we're used to noise. We're used to something like this. So this is what we see every day on television. People yelling at us, people trying to get our attention, people interrupting. So ever since the dawn of advertising, it's been around an interruption. And on Twitter, it's very different. On Twitter, the art of advertising is with a conversation. So what we say is, on Twitter, the conversation is the canvas. It's the blank paper to create your stories on. And it's done through talking. Brands and people talking together. And that's really a first in history. If 10 years ago you said you were talking to a logo, people would have thought you were crazy. Today, people talk to brands every day. In the last year alone, we've seen 100% growth in our user base. It took us 3 years, 2 months, and 1 day to get to 1 billion tweets. And we now do that every 2.5 days. That's a massive amount of tweets flowing through the platform, and just a massive amount of conversation. And it's primarily done through your mobile phone. Overall, 60% of our usage is on the mobile phone. In places like the UK, it's 80%. The origin of Twitter is a mobile company. 140 characters for the 160 character SMS text limit. And we're growing. We're growing around the world. If you look specifically at our world map, you can see that Latin America is actually one of our 4th largest markets. 32 million people in Latin America use Twitter. The vast majority of that is here in Brazil. So we're really excited to open for business here, and excited to show you what we have today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gaeli to talk about what specifically are people doing in Brazil with Twitter, what interests are important, and what's the unique relationship between Twitter and television.
Thanks, Joel. People are talking on Twitter those 400 million times a day about what's interesting to them, about the individuals, the issues, the topics, about what's happening now that matters to them today, right now. And it turns out one of the things that people like talking about a lot is the shared experience of TV. When you look at the top tweet moments in Brazil in 2012, almost all of them relate to television. You see people talking about The Voice. You see people talking about live events. They tend to do very, very well. Sporting events are things people share collectively on their mobile devices, on Twitter, really as a second screen for TV. You see it time and again. Here you see it in football matches. You see it around the world with sporting events. You also see a soap opera. Avenida Brasil is the blockbuster soap opera from Globo. And as you saw, people tweeted about it all the time. They even renamed it on Twitter to Oi Oi Oi. They tweeted about it millions of times so that it trended in Brazil. It even trended globally. And all of this happened organically, without Globo activating on air with hashtags. Other shows in Brazil, like Big Brother Brazil, like The Voice Brazil, did activate with the hashtag on air to try to stimulate the conversation. They saw what the X Factor saw in the UK. Here's one example of how X Factor activated that. This young lady was a performer on the show. She was singing a song about drinking beer and the things that happen after you drink beer. And they thought, hey, let's stimulate some conversation about this. So I'll show you her playing in a second. You will see them putting a hashtag on air partway through this video. Watch the white and blue lines. The white line is the number of tweets about The Voice. That's happening all the time. People are talking about it. The blue line are tweets with the hashtag beer here. Take a look.
Sitting in a cupboard with my weird best friend, but I'm only young, so I'm not gonna pretend I was shy. Cause I'm not joking. I love drinking too much and socially smoking. Don't wanna stop, all over the hate, amen. And I hate just missed another day again.
Brands have seen this potential. They've seen the opportunity to make their TV dollars and investment work harder for them. To take the exact same investment they've made in other media and get more conversation the day they're investing in that media, and conversation continuing in the days and weeks afterwards by putting hashtags in outdoor, in print, and on TV. The Super Bowl is the biggest sporting event in the US. It becomes a global event. In this year's Super Bowl, half of the brands that advertised, that spent $3-4 million on a 30-second spot, half of them put a hashtag in their commercial. And that was up 150% from the previous year. They got more out of that exact same investment by putting the hashtag on air for a bit, and it started 2 years ago with Audi. Last year, Audi ran a commercial I'll show you in a minute, where they were saying, our headlights are so good, it's like bringing daylight in a car, and they showed, at the end of this commercial, the effect of that on vampires. After bringing some humor to it with the vampires exploding, they put this hashtag on air for 2 or 3 seconds. This is what it looked like in their social command center. On the right, you see their view on TweetDeck, with the tweets coming. And on the left, you see a graph of the tweets for that hashtag in red, and about Audi overall in blue. So they drove a tremendous amount of conversation specific to that hashtag, and grew the conversation about Audi overall, simply by putting the hashtag on air and making their TV investment work harder for them. Other brands are using Twitter integration to drive engagement and make their creative more engaging, like Mercedes did in the UK during the premiere of X Factor. They, for the first time, said, you, the viewer, will choose the ending of our commercial. They showed this spot, I'll show you in a minute, at the beginning of the show. And at the end of the show, they showed the ending that consumers had chosen. Interesting, creative, never been done before, but did it make a difference? Did it work? It turns out it did. Almost 3 out of 4 people took the desired call to action. Almost 3 out of 4 people tweeted with one of the hashtags they had on air. And in addition, 1 out of 4 people said, I want more information about the Mercedes A-Class. Not an inexpensive investment. They got real value out of this. We see brands doing this and using this platform around the world, including here in Brazil, which Guilherme is going to tell you a little bit more about.
Eu vou voltar para o português rapidamente. Assim, a nossa visão é que o mercado brasileiro ele começa a exercitar esse mesmo objetivo, né, de continuar com a conversa que uma campanha que vai para a televisão, ou para o jornal, ou para a revista, ou para outros meios, ela possa continuar no Twitter. Né? Então, o que a gente tem começado a ver? A presença de mais e mais hashtags nessas campanhas. Recentemente, depois do Carnaval, a Smirnoff lançou a campanha Ice de Perto, fazendo uma brincadeira com a música do Michel Teló, onde a campanha é basicamente uma hashtag. Né? Se você observar, ela é focada em cima da hashtag Ice de Perto. Né? E por quê? Porque o objetivo dela é continuar essa conversa dentro do Twitter e fazer com que isso possa continuar mais e mais ativo e ganhar cada vez mais promoção em cima daquilo que ele já está investindo, que ele está na televisão. O Correios fez isso recentemente, a CVC fez isso recentemente, a Devassa, antes do Carnaval, lançou uma campanha. Então nós estamos vendo cada vez mais as agências e os anunciantes indo para essa direção. Além disso, a gente está também nesse momento num roadshow no mercado brasileiro e mostrando como o Twitter pode ser utilizado, a presença do Twitter para eles. E é interessante observar como, organicamente, mesmo antes de nós estarmos presentes com os nossos produtos promovidos, que o Guy daqui a pouquinho vai mostrar como eles funcionam, organicamente muitos desses anunciantes eles já estavam presentes dentro da rede, né, e ativos dentro da rede. Então, tem alguns exemplos aqui na tela. A Coca-Cola, em particular, ela é a nossa parceira do nosso lançamento aqui no Brasil. Então, eles fecharam um acordo conosco para ser nosso parceiro nesse lançamento. É uma das empresas que tem mais se esforçado no seu aspecto social, porque a Coca-Cola entende que é super importante que ele continue a conversa com os seus consumidores. Né? É uma marca que tem isso muito intrínseca dentro da característica dela. Né? Isso está acontecendo, obviamente, com outras marcas. Né? A gente tem N exemplos aqui. Então, o nosso momento é de organicamente continuar trabalhando com essas marcas para incentivá-las a usar o Twitter e começar a mostrar a oportunidade deles amplificarem esses esforços orgânicos que eles estão fazendo usando os nossos produtos promovidos. Tá? Então, com isso, eu passo de volta para o Guy, que ele vai falar um pouco mais dos produtos daqui a pouco.
Among those implementations and integrations of Twitter, Volkswagen had a really actually interesting example here in Brazil. They said, hey, we have our trendy Fox car. We're targeting youth. Youth like music. One of the biggest music festivals in Brazil is Planeta Terra. They said, well, we're going to connect the two with a very interesting approach. I'll show you how they did it.
Volkswagen saw this event as an opportunity to bring youngsters closer to their trendy car, the Fox. Well, the question is, how do we let the rest of São Paulo know that the Fox will be at the Planeta Terra? First, you point out what they need to hear. Then, you give them what they want. Tickets for the festival. Only not that easy. We're here to 10 different places within the city. In order to find the lost tickets, people have to tweet Fox at Planeta Terra. The mechanic was simple. The more tweets, the closer the zoom gets. The first one to arrive won a pair of tickets. A few minutes later, another race began. This went on for 4 days straight.
They were able to, with a handful of tickets, connect their brand and their message exactly to their target audience and make live activation much bigger. They trended in Brazil repeatedly, they trended in Sao Paulo repeatedly, and drove tremendous conversation directly among their target audience, taking that existing investment and making it work a lot harder for them. These are a bunch of examples about how brands have driven engagement and motivated consumers to action on this platform, and we see it happening at scale. In fact, on Twitter, consumers engage with ads 1 to 3% of the time on average. That's 20, 30, 50 times what we are all used to as marketers in traditional display advertising. It's on par with what advertisers see in search advertising. And when you pair it with the promoted trend, that lifts all the way to 10 to 13%. We think this happens for 2 reasons. One is that on this platform, consumers, through their own entertainment, their own self-interested use of the platform, are giving us great signals every day about what's interesting to them. You follow in public. You're followed in public. You tweet in public. The expectation on this platform is that all of those things happen in public, and then based on your actions, based on what you actually do every day, we can paint a really vivid picture about what's interesting to you right now. It's not what you say you're interested in. It's not what you thought you might be interested in the day you joined the platform. It's actually the actions you take every day. Other platforms use search as a mechanism, friends as a signal. We think interests are different, current, and have great commercial intent to help put the right message from a brand in front of users that are likely to engage with it. And we think the numbers show that. The other reason we think the engagement rates are high is the choice for the ad unit itself. On Twitter, the content is the ad. There's no 300 by 250 display banner off to the side. We could put 3D rotating text on Twitter tomorrow and make a lot of money, and we won't do that. On Twitter, ads are prominent, targeted placements of the organic experience. So to turn this tweet into an ad, you simply put that promoted icon at the bottom, and then consumers can interact with it just like they do any other tweet. They can click on the link. They can retweet it. Think about what that means. When was the last time you saw an ad online that was so great you took a picture of it and you emailed it to all your friends? It never happens. On this platform, it happens every day at scale when people retweet these ads and send it on to their followers. Our approach to advertising was built on learnings from the previous ad platforms that we've all worked at, that have been in the industry, and our approach is one of simplicity. The entire product line is 3 products, and I wanted to briefly share them with you. This is the organic experience when you log into Twitter. Everything you do on the desktop is mirrored on mobile, and the 3 ad units begin with growing your follower base. On the right, you have recommendations for accounts we think you might find interesting based on your interests. As an advertiser, you can say, great, I want to accelerate the growth of my follower base by choosing the kinds of people I want to reach, the geography, their interests, whether they're on mobile devices, whether they're male or female, and put myself at the top of that list, and it's a performance-driven model. All of the impressions are free. Advertisers only pay when users click to follow, and it's like paid search in that it's a second price auction, so that you pay a penny more than the second bidder behind you. That's the first thing you can do. The second thing you can do is similar to what we saw in some of those creative examples. You can spark a conversation with a trend. People are looking in the lower right there all the time for what's happening now, what's current, what's new. You can own that top spot in Brazil for 24 hours for a fixed fee. And when we look at the conversation that typically happens for brands when they do this, if the conversation was at this level the week before, the day they do this, it's usually 10 times that. And the week after, it's usually double what it was the week before. So it's not just that day, the conversation continues. The third option you have is the most scalable one for driving consumers to action. People are looking at their timeline, they're looking at tweets every day. They're also searching on this platform. And you can appear in both places. You can appear when people search for your brand, when they search for your products. You also can appear in users' timelines, motivating consumers to shift their brand perception, go buy things, extend the messaging you might have on TV. This is, because this looks like the content and is intermingled with the content, we think that's the second reason why the engagement rates are so high. And brands now have a big creative canvas, bless you, with which they can communicate more than you think you could communicate in 140 characters. When brands post a video on YouTube or a picture on Flickr or put content from any one of 2,000 media partners that we have in their tweet, users can click on the tweet, expand it, and see right there in line on desktops, on a mobile phone, on tablets, the video right there and play it, extending that brand message, bringing sight, sound, and motion. To help brands put the right message in front of the right audience, we give them targeting like they're used to in other ad platforms on the right side of this slide. Search, mobile operating system, geography, gender. Those are things that are familiar to them. On the left, we have a differentiated set of targeting, things that are uniquely Twitter because we have a deeper understanding of people's interests. You can target people who look like your followers, and by look-alike, we mean we look at your follower base, we see what interests they have, and then we find people who don't yet follow you, but have similar interests. They probably would be interested in your message. And so you can expand there, or you can target on the far left across all of Twitter, picking the interests that are relevant for that particular message to put it in front of the right users. Our hope is that this intro gives you a sense of how some brands, large and medium brands, are using this platform at scale, integrated with their other media, and driving great consumer engagement. And now I'll turn it over to John to talk about how smaller businesses are activating on the platform as well.
Thanks, Ken. Bom dia, sou o John Sacos. Falo pouco de português. Volto para inglês num momento, mas antes quero agradecer meus amigos dos Estados Unidos. Na verdade, eu morei em São Paulo por 2 anos e também minha namorada é brasileira. Então, falo pouco. But I'll switch back to English for the purpose of this presentation. One of the things we're most excited about at Twitter is the sheer number of businesses. The sheer number of businesses on the platform. So roughly 4.5 million businesses, the vast majority of which are small businesses and medium-sized businesses, and that's worldwide. So when you think about what those businesses are doing and what users and Twitter users are looking for, this is basically when we took a look at all the interest out there related to the business space. This is what consumers are using Twitter to look for. So brand categories, they're looking at restaurants, the biggest category, obviously most of which are local and small businesses. Retailers, again, these are in large part a lot of your storefront shops here in Sao Paulo and Rio and around the world. CPG, consumer packaged goods, entertainment, etc. Here's an example of a restaurant here in Sao Paulo. So you see a very creative page here, Nakombi. You also see, if you look at a few examples of their tweets, they're making announcements about the food they're serving, about specials they're having. And one of the really interesting things about the Twitter platform is it's not just the business that's speaking to consumers, but it's also their followers. So in this case, you have, in the first case, nothing's better than cold Heineken with Japanese food at Nakombi. So the customer is actually becoming a brand advocate, and that gives the restaurant the opportunity to respond back. We hope you liked it. Hugs the Nakombi team. Another example, and this is maybe even a better one, someone who actually took a picture of a new plate that they had at the restaurant. So again, a customer who came into the restaurant is now not just a customer, but a brand advocate, someone who's speaking to all of their followers about the great things about that restaurant. It's not just Sao Paulo, though. Here's an example from Rio, of course, another restaurant group. And these are just two examples of the millions of businesses that are using the platform. And this is not talking about advertising, it's talking about natural use. So the ability to just set up, in a matter of minutes, a Twitter page, get your profile up and running, and then every day or even every hour in some cases, sending updates to people who are interested in your business. So this is taking a look at retail in particular. We took a look at the volume of conversations going on around the retail space. So people who were interested in buying products and what they were talking about on Twitter. What you'll see here is fantastic growth over time. 61% year-over-year growth from June of last year to June of the following year. 4.5 million average weekly mentions of people making purchases or talking about purchases on the platform. One really interesting thing is a lot of people, when they first start using Twitter or first learn about Twitter, they ask, well, do people really follow businesses? Is that something that's a natural behavior? One of the really great statistics we've seen is that more than half of Twitter users actually follow more than 6 businesses. So that's aside from their friends, family, journalists, and other people they're interested in. They're following 6 brands out there, 6 businesses, which is really remarkable. So we also asked users, why are they following brands? Why are they interested in learning about businesses, and what specifically are they hoping to get out of it? Maybe not too surprising, the first thing they're hoping to get is discounts and promotions. So if you're a business out there, a local business, for example, local businesses often run promotions. Think back to even a few years ago, a lot of the ways that was done was handing out flyers or putting it out in a local newspaper saying, Tuesdays, you'll get a free drink with your meal or something like that. Now you have the opportunity to do that in real time on the platform, and what all the data shows is this is exactly what users are looking for. Aside from that, there's more than half of Twitter users who are following brands are looking for exclusive content. So they want to see something about the company, they want to learn something about the product that the general public doesn't necessarily know. And that's another way that businesses have been using Twitter with great success. So here's a really creative example. This one's from the United States. Bonobos is an online retailer of men's clothing. It started off very, very small. They made special pants, basically khaki pants in different colors. So when they came on the platform, one of the first things they did was they had what we call a flock to unlock. It's a fancy name of basically saying, they put this tweet out there saying that as soon as 65 people retweet this tweet, so spread the word about this promotion, we're unlocking a special deal. So in this case, pants that were $88 will go to $65 if 65 people mention this or retweet this promotion. Here's another example of it. And in this case, they actually used advertising to even broaden the base of people seeing the ad further. So what did they see from this? They saw 100 first-time purchasers who had never shopped at the store before, and this in the first day. They saw 1,200% return on investment on their advertising investment, and really, it was a great way of getting the brand name out there and building a bigger customer base. So putting bonobos aside for a second and looking at retail purchases online in general, what we see is that when a business has exposure to consumers on Twitter, those consumers are 1.4 times more likely to purchase online from that retailer. What we've also seen is this translates to the offline world. So this translates to local businesses, coffee shops, restaurants. In the case of one coffee shop in the US, anecdotally, what they did is they ran a special. You get a free coffee of a certain type if you came in between the hours of, I think it was between 5 and 7 p.m. They saw a 68% increase during that time period of actual in-store purchases, visitors to the store. So it's not just online traffic, but this is bringing people into storefronts in neighborhoods across the world. So I'll stop there for a second and take a step back and kind of what I'm thinking about with the team here that will be focused on mid-market in Brazil and small businesses in Brazil. To give some perspective, when I was here a few years ago, I worked with Google, and one of the big initiatives we worked on at the time was with Sebrae. It was called Conecte Seu Negócio, and the point of this was what we saw is that there was this incredible amount of entrepreneurship among small businesses in Brazil. So I think it has one of the highest rates of entrepreneurship, over 15%, according to some statistics, showing that 15% or more of the workforce at any given time is starting a business. When we compared that to the amount of businesses that actually had a website or an online presence, that percentage was very, very small. And then when we took a look at how were people trying to find out about small businesses, the vast majority of consumers were actually looking online for products and services. So there was this gap between the entrepreneurship and the businesses that were starting, and then the online presence. And we saw that as a huge opportunity, as did Sebrae and some of our partners, HP and others at the time. That particular promotion had to do with starting a website. And what I think the real opportunity with Twitter is this is the next natural evolution for businesses. So if you think back to 20 years ago, if you were an entrepreneur and you started a business, to get the word out there, you likely had to buy some form of advertising. In a lot of cases, it was expensive. You had to get a newspaper ad, a print ad, etc., a radio ad in some cases. A website was the next step. It allowed you to have a presence, build the infrastructure, put your menu online, start selling products online. We think with Twitter, your online presence just got a lot easier. And it just got a lot better as well. The reason being, instead of having a static web page that people could interact with if they came to it, this is a conversation. Guy talked about the conversation being the canvas. That's true with businesses as well, and you saw that in the case of the restaurants we just looked at. It's not a one-way conversation. It's not a business putting up a menu. It's actually them broadcasting what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, what the specials are, and then also incorporating consumer desires, feedback, etc. And so a lot of people ask, well, how would a small business get started? Yes, they could set up a presence in minutes, but what does that look like day to day? What should they be doing? Here's just one example of a template that we give small businesses. So they ask, what should I be tweeting about? And it is a real-time platform, so you do have to stay engaged. This is just one idea. So maybe on Monday, you would give a behind-the-scenes look at the restaurant. You would show some of your new dishes, maybe the new chef. Tuesdays, you would offer that special promotion. So a discount of some sort. Your followers would see this. You'd drive traffic to your store. Wednesdays, maybe helpful tips. For example, in the case of the Japanese restaurant, maybe tips about if you're making Japanese food at home. Thursday, media spotlights. And then Friday might be a focus on followers. So maybe that's where you want to actually respond and answer questions that your followers are writing in. So this is one example. It's one idea. Businesses do this differently. But it's very, very easy, I think, is the point, to set up a presence on Twitter as a business and to stay in touch with your customers in a way that wasn't even possible a couple years ago. So thank you. I think there's tremendous opportunity in Brazil in this space.
Legal, gente. A nossa apresentação termina agora, a gente está agora, enfim, aberto para perguntas e respostas. Por favor, fiquem à vontade e espero que a gente possa responder para vocês.